never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully. Appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist. Mission control, do you read me? Send me my coordinates lately. Mission control, am I drifting? Tie me to someone who will love me, yeah. Wait, I think I'll last a bit longer. Find another reason to breathe this air.
Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. It is a Saturday, so let me start out today's video by saying that hopefully I will see a lot of you tonight at 244 Livestock Road, East Denali, Georgia, for some great SWA wrestling, which will include the debut of my lovely, wonderful wife. But since we are 7 weeks away from week 0 in college football, I figured today we'll talk about some college football. And as you can tell by the title of the video, why do we panic and expect the worst? And I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But first, I want to give my quick thoughts on the whole Baker Mayfield thing. And if you follow the channel, you've heard me say before that Baker Mayfield was the best quarterback that the Browns have had in 20 years. That's true. That's fact. Look at all the quarterbacks they've had since they were brought back into the NFL in, I believe, 1998. And Baker Mayfield was the best quarterback they've had since they came back into the NFL as a franchise. That being said, he was their best. He still is not any good. He's an average quarterback at best. He's not terrible. He's just not great. And the Panthers pretty much picked him up for a 24-pack of Mountain Dew and a box of Slim Jim. So if you can get a quarterback for a 24-pack of Mountain Dew and a box of Slim Jims, you go ahead and do it. But the Panthers got him at a discounted price. So if the Panthers knew that he was on discount, every other team in the NFL knew, and nobody wanted him. And there are at least 5 teams in the NFL that don't have quarterbacks, and they still didn't want Baker Mayfield. That just tells you all you've got to know about Baker Mayfield. Love him or hate him, he's an average quarterback. That's what he is. He don't win many games. He just don't lose many games. He's just there. He had the best offensive line in football, in my opinion, since 2018, and still he's done nothing with it. But on to today's video. Why do we panic and expect the worst? And the reason why I asked that is because ever since they announced last week that UCLA and USC were leaving the Pac-12 and going to the Big Ten, every article I read and everybody I hear talk about college football says, oh, this is the death of college football. It's going away now. Why do we think that? We as humans, it's natural reaction for us to always think negative. No matter what happens in life, your first reaction is always negative. That's just the way we're wired. Not only that, but as humans, we don't like change. Nobody likes change. So when something happens that you don't expect, automatically you think the worst. But this is not going to be the death of college football. What's going to be the death of college football is the fact that there are no rules, because you have to have rules. The reason why the NFL makes so much money on a yearly basis and is so successful on a yearly basis is because they have rules and they make everybody follow those rules. And now that college football is paying their players, it's pretty much became a NFL light, so to speak, NFL developmental territory, and they're paying the players, they're going to have rules. The reason why they haven't had rules is because they can do what they want to, and you can't stop them. You can't question them because there's no rules. So they're not breaking any rule because it ain't there. But people have been kind of upset about the NCAA when it comes to football ever since they had the Incest Bowl years ago with LSU and Alabama. That game never should have happened. The Incest Bowl was bad for college football, but the reason why they were able to have the Incest Bowl was because there's no rules. When there's no rules, you can do what you want to. But you just follow the college football playoff since it started, and one year a team will win their conference and they still won't make the playoffs. The next year there'll be a team that don't even win their conference, but they'll make the playoffs. It makes no sense. There's no rhyme or reason, but guess what? When there's no rules, you can do what you want to. But now that you're paying these players, you're going to have rules, because most people don't know this, but college football head coaches make more, and by more, I mean way more than NFL head coaches. So you can't have a team, whoever it is, paying their coach $8, $9, $10 million a year, and also now paying the players $7, $8, $9 million a year. You won't make it. No matter how rich your school is, you're going to be broke in 10 years' time. You just can't pay that kind of money out. Especially when, even if you fire the coach, you still got to pay him. So you're paying out hundreds of millions of dollars every year. That's not possible. That's not feasible. So they're going to have to put some kind of limit on the whole name, image, likeness thing. Otherwise, that will be the death of college football, not all this conference talk. And I really, truly don't follow it a whole lot, because of the fact that at the end of the day, all I care about is that come late August, early September, there's college football. That's all I care about. I don't care who's in what conference. I don't care who plays who. I don't care where the game is played at. All I care about is the fact that there's college football. But you can't follow along with this, because ever since the whole UCLA USC thing came out last week, every day now there's different articles come out. One day it's only going to be the Big Ten and the SEC, no other conference. And the next day you hear that the ACC is going to merge with the Pac-12, and it's going to become a mega conference, and the Big 12 is going to fold. And the next day you hear the Big 12 is going to stay around and add some teams. And the next day they say the Big 12 and the Pac-12 is going to merge, and the ACC is going to fold. So you'll drive yourself crazy if you try to follow all the stuff they're saying. But all that matters is one team leaving one conference, going to another conference, is not going to kill college football. College football will make it through that. If you remember years ago, I can remember when I first started watching Clemson football in the mid-90s when Tommy West was their coach. The ACC was 9 teams. This was before Boston College, before Louisville, before Miami, before Syracuse, and before Va-Tech. It was 9 teams. And that was it. And I remember that. And guess what? They've added all these teams, and everything's fine. But I can remember when Missouri and Texas A&M left the Big 12 to go to the SEC. Geographically, it made no sense. And you had all the SEC fans saying, why in the world does Missouri want to come to the SEC? They couldn't even win the Big 12, and they come to the SEC and they win the East 2 straight years. But here we are a decade later, and geographically it still makes no sense for Missouri and A&M to be in the SEC. But since it's a decade later now, it's no big deal. We've become accustomed to it. We've gotten adjusted to it. We're used to it. No big deal. Colorado left the Big 12 to go to the Pac-12. And everybody said, oh, that's going to destroy the Big 12. It's a decade later, and the Big 12 is still around. And then you had Maryland. And Maryland's one of those teams that very rarely are they a 10-win team, but very rarely are they a 2-win team. They're usually a 6, 7-win team. But for some reason, when they left the ACC to go to the Big Ten, everybody said, oh, that's going to destroy the ACC. And here we are a decade later, and the ACC is still around. And then you had Nebraska leave the Big 12 to go to the Big 10. And now Nebraska is an average team, but 15 years ago, Nebraska was really, really good. So when they left the Big 12 to go to the Big 10, it was, oh God, Nebraska, that's a rich school. They're so good, all that money. Big 12's going to die. And the Big 12 is still around. So college football is not going to fold because a team left one conference and went to another. Now, what's going to happen? I don't know, because like I said, these articles come out not just daily but almost hourly, as far as this team's going to this conference, this team's going to this conference is going to shut down, this conference is going to shut down. But I've been saying here on the channel now for over a year that we were going to have 4 mega conferences and the rest would just fade away, and it may turn out to be 2 or 3 mega conferences when it's all said and done. But I have a couple of questions that won't get answered until all this stuff gets finalized. But the first question is, let's say it is only 2 conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC, and let's say there's 25 teams in the Big Ten, 25 teams in the SEC. That's 50 teams. What happens to all the other teams, like Rutgers, Northwestern, Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, just teams like that that we know aren't good enough to be in a mega conference? Do they just fold up shop and go home? Or do they drop down to 1AA? Or do they break away and just start a smaller division or smaller conference, whatever you want to call it, with all the teams that aren't good enough to be in a mega conference? I don't know. I'm curious, but those things we won't know about until all this gets finalized, because all you hear about is, which mega team is going to which mega conference. But nobody's talking about teams like Rutgers and teams like Northwestern, teams like Georgia Tech. I want to know what they're going to do. But all we're focused on right now is the big-time teams and not the lower-tier teams. And I also wonder about the playoffs, because I liked the BCS, but when they announced the playoffs, I said 4 teams is all we need. But of course, everybody's selfish and everybody wants 16 teams. But if you only have 2 conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC, do you really need a 16-team playoff? Because what that means is you're going to have 8 teams in the Big Ten and 8 teams in the SEC go to the playoffs. Do you really want to see a 16-team playoff with 2 conferences? I don't. I don't see a reason for it. But if you do expand the playoffs to 16 teams and all you have is 2 conferences, you have to have 16 teams from 2 conferences. There's no other choice. So those are the kind of things that I wonder about and worry about and think about. But those kind of things won't be answered until we finalize which team's going to which conference. Are we only going to have 2 conferences? Or is the ACC going to merge with the Pac-12? Is the Big 12 going to merge with the Pac-12? But most of this stuff won't be finalized till 2025. So we've got 3 years to talk about it and think about it and wonder about it. So it's fun to talk about, and it gives us football to talk about even during the off season. So it's pretty much college football year round now because of all this stuff. But like I said earlier, to me, all that matters is during the week and weekend, starting in late August, early September, we've got college football. And that's all I care about. In July is the last time. There'll be no football until March of next year. So this is the busy time of the year, because the season is inching ever so closer. Any thoughts on this? Please feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. My wife gave me an ultimatum. It was either her or my addiction to sweets. The decision was a piece of cake. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.